This is Japanese knotweed, a non-native invasive spreading along stream banks and former strip mines across Pennsylvania, choking out native plants, degrading water quality, and providing neither habitat nor food for wildlife. Japanese knotweed is controllable. Native plants, insects, and animals can reclaim these colonized spaces following 2 to 3 years of consistent treatment.
So you have straight up Japanese knotweed, which is, I would say this is Japanese knotweed. So that leaf across the bottom is kind of flat. And it's about the size that it is, about the size of my hand, at least the bigger ones. There's also giant knotweed, which isn't that, around here is fairly common, but that's the one that's got like the 12-inch leaf that's distinctly heart-shaped, but it's bigger. And then you have a hybrid of the two, which is commonly referred to as Bohemian knotweed. And the leaf characters are kind of intermediate. But your other point is correct. You could just call it all knotweed, and the management is the same. The general impacts of it, all of the species is the same. Their adaptation is pretty similar. So operationally, yeah, it's just all knotweed. When you really get in there on your hands and knees in these stands, even though it looks almost like it's thick like grass, you really kind of have these big clumps in there. And these clumps are connected by those rhizomes, but kind of like this spidery web network. But it's not unusual to just kind of see these big clumps. It'll be dozens of stems. So if you'll see some of what's going on in here, but you have this, what looks like, it looks woody, and technically it is. Their rhizomes actually persist from year to year and will put on growth rings. And you'll get these clumps, and then they'll be connected by rhizomes. And at the edge of a stand, those rhizomes are out exploring for places to start new clumps. So that's how they spread. Cutting won't kill the plant, but if you keep reducing the amount of foliage, you reduce its ability to spread. And I doubt that cutting would ever make a stand smaller. I've seen places where knotweed was basically cut down and turned into lawn, but you can still see it in the lawn. And then as soon as they say, oh, I'm done with this being a lawn, it turns back into a knotweed stand. So cutting is a very useful tool in the overall management process, but I think you'll find that your persistence is going to be defeated by its tenacity, and that you can't cut it enough to kill it. And as you cut it more and more, it goes from 12 stems in a clump to then you really do start to get it kind of comes up like grass. The more you cut it, the more stems it has. They're just shorter, but it just has more and more stems. So like this time of year, now that we're late in the season, when these plants are now really preparing for next year, you put a systemic herbicide on there, it moves in the direction of the sugars, moves down into those rhizomes. The simple language is, and it kills the rhizomes, or it gets in there and prevents those rhizomes from growing the next season. For the qualms people would have about using herbicides just for their own personal use, potential personal exposure, working close to waterways, we'll say the advantage of herbicides is you can kill that root system with a few visits over a few seasons, and you're not going to get that soil disturbance that you would get with constant mechanical work, or mechanical, let's say cutting in combination with, grubbing it out. So it does give you that advantage of you can actually kill those underground structures without disturbing the soil. And if you're using a product like glyphosate, which was kind of our primary tool, it's certainly in the soil after you apply it, but it's not active in the soil. it binds to the soil particle, so it's not taken up by the roots of other plants. I mean, you can, if I wanted to reseed this spot, I could treat that with glyphosate now and basically seed it as long as it takes me, to go run and get the seed. It's not active in the soil. There would be other herbicides out there that would be, but in terms of providing the flexibility to get something else to grow there, either get the native seed bank to come back or to seed it yourself, revegetate it yourself, glyphosate gives the advantage of it's not going to give you any restrictions that way. And it's also a product that's available in what we would call an aquatic registered or labeled form. So there's a number of glyphosate products that we could, if we had the permit, spray right into the water to plants growing out of the water.
Decide between application methods. Spray to wet covers more area with less concentrated chemical, while a calibrated application is specific to each backpack user. Blue dye reveals whether the desired droplet density has been evenly reached. Please see Penn State Extension for detailed information on application options and proper chemical mixing.
It's not going to harm fish. It's not going to harm the macroinvertebrates, the insect larvae that are in there. It's really other plants. So that's kind of the biggest constraint when doing knotweed control management suppression, is making sure if there are other desirable plants in there that we do what we need to do to preserve them. And usually it's just don't spray them. Figure out where they are and don't spray them.
I'm going to explain a little bit more about a larger operational type of application. If you can picture this area here of knotweed multiplied by about 10 times, you will see where sometimes it becomes so dominating that you might not want to get involved with it. But we have the application equipment and such that we can actually go into a patch, like I say, 10 times larger than this, and do a very effective application. In that case, it's called a high volume application. Well, as has been mentioned earlier, by far the best time to spray even these larger blocks and larger size plants is from the mid to late August into September. August into September is because the plant is putting the materials into the root system for storage over winter for next year's growth. And if we can get the most amount of material in during that period of time, then we have a greater chance at being effective.
For landowners who'd rather not treat invasives themselves, licensed plant management companies can be hired to treat annually for several years. For large stands, look for a high volume application rather than by backpack sprayer.
This is a high volume application gun. Trigger operated, and we can adjust the stream with this front lever from a straight stream to a mist. We don't use the mist very often, but if we have to, it can be used. This is attached to 800 feet of hose and gives us the opportunity to be able to get large distances. Okay. This is the straight stream, and just to a mist. Okay.
All right, so I'm using Roundup Custom, which is a product that contains only glyphosate as the active ingredient. There are a lot of different glyphosate products on the market. They're all easy to get and they're relatively inexpensive. There are a few things to consider when you're choosing a product. One would be whether or not it has aquatic labeling. So Roundup Custom is an aquatic labeled product. It says right on the front for aquatic and terrestrial use. So because knotweed oftentimes is growing near a body of water, if you are going to be spraying right basically adjacent to a body of water, it's a good idea to use an aquatic labeled product because basically those ones have been tested for their level of toxicity to aquatic organisms, and they've been determined to be of little or no toxicity to aquatic organisms. And so it's usually a good idea to just try to use aquatic labeled products when you're close to the water. And then also, the other thing to pay attention to would be the amount of active ingredient that's in your product. So if you look at the label, there will be an ingredient statement on the label, which tells you the amount of active ingredient that's in the product. And directly underneath that ingredient statement, it'll tell you basically a pounds of acid equivalent per gallon. So that's the phrase you want to look for, acid equivalent and pounds per gallon. So in the case of Roundup Custom and several other glyphosate products, it'll say 4 pounds acid equivalent per gallon. So that means there are 4 pounds of glyphosate acid per gallon of this product. There are also a lot of glyphosate products that are only 3 pounds per gallon, so it's a little bit less concentrated. And so depending on which one you're using, that will affect the rate at which you apply it. So if you're doing a calibrated application, the typical rate for Roundup Custom or a 4 pound per gallon product would be 96 ounces per acre. If you're using a 3 pound product, the rate would be 128 ounces per acre. And if you're doing the spray to wet and you're only doing a % volume, the Roundup Custom label actually recommends using 2% for knotweed treatments. And I don't know off the top of my head what a 3 pound per gallon product recommends, but it's probably a little bit higher. So just pay attention to that on your label as well when you're choosing products. And of course, you should just refer to the product label for the recommended rates that you should be using. All right, so now for the mixing, notice that I do have everything in these plastic bins. So this is called containment, and it's always, well, it really is a required practice to do all of your mixing within containment. That way, if you have any accidental spills, that spill is contained and it won't be getting all over the place. So I have my products, I have my glyphosate, and then I also have this is a squeeze and pour bottle with surfactant in it. And then this is one with my colored dye, which will help me to be able to see where I'm spraying. Speaking of surfactant, I should mention that I'm aware of, all of the aquatic label glyphosate products that are currently out there do not have surfactant included in them. So if you use a product that does not have surfactant already in it, you will need to purchase a surfactant to mix with it, because the surfactant helps the herbicide to be better absorbed into the plant, basically. So you'll get better effectiveness if you use a surfactant. And you also should check the surfactant label as well and make sure that it's aquatic labeled if you're working close to the water. All of the 3 pound per gallon glyphosate products, which are not aquatic labeled, they all do contain surfactant in them already. So you would not need to add a surfactant to those ones. So I'm going to add the glyphosate product in first. Also, I do have my PPE on. The label requires that I wear long sleeve shirt, long pants, and shoes plus socks. So what it really means is waterproof shoes. So I have my rubber boots on. I have my PPE. Does not require eye protection. So I don't have safety glasses on, although you can always wear them if you're more comfortable. So I have my measuring cup inside my containment bin. And these bins are not fancy. You can just get them at Walmart or wherever. It doesn't have to be anything special. And okay. So you pour your product into your mixing container and then give it a shake. Try to get it mixed in there, and then make sure you close your other container so there's no spills. And then you're going to want to have a little container of water as well, because you will rinse out your mixing or your measuring container, and you're going to pour that rinsate directly into your mixing jug. So just pour a little bit of water in, swirl it around, pour it into your mixing container, and you're going to do that 3 times. The gold standard for pesticide rinsing is a triple rinse. So if you do a rinse 3 times, it actually does remove 99.9% of that chemical from the container. Okay, so my measuring cup is now clean. Now I'm going to get out my surfactant. And this is a squeeze and pour, so it's very convenient. I don't have to have a measuring cup. I can just measure it right in this bottle, and this is going to be, this particular surfactant is going in at a 0.5% of my volume. So for 5 liters, that came out to be 25 milliliters. After you add each ingredient, you need to shake and mix it up. And now I'm going to do my colored dye, which is also, this is going to be at 0.75%. And the colored dye just helps you to see where you're spraying and how much spray you're applying. If you don't use colored dye, it is very easy to over apply or to accidentally spray the same thing multiple times, or you might miss something altogether. So it's always a good idea to use that dye. Notice that I have labeled my container, and this is critical so that you know exactly what's in here. So if you have to store any of your mix for later use, you need to know exactly what's in it. And you need to know the date that you mixed it as well. So I have the date, I have herbicide mix in bold letters, and then you have to write the brand name of every herbicide product that you included. So in this case, I just have Roundup Custom. Federal law requires pesticide containers to be clearly marked in this way. So I am doing a calibrated application, so I'm spraying very lightly. I'm basically just misting the plants. I am not doing spray to wet. And whenever you're spraying, it's usually best to do it in short bursts. So I just, basically I have one finger on the trigger and I just crack it open and do one sweep with the wand, and then I let go and do it again. And this is, it's easier to do it that way so that you don't over apply. And with my adjustable cone nozzle, I can open it up to more of a stream so I can shoot further away.
Invasive control is always most effective when adjoining landowners coordinate efforts. One landowner participating in the Cook Forest Conservancy Knotweed Control Program along the Clarion River sent in his progress photos. In early June 2022, the knotweed had covered the guardrail. We cut it back so the effort of regrowing would weaken the plants. We waited until September, when the plants were drawing in fluid for the coming winter, and sprayed with aquatic-safe glyphosate. The leaves yellowed immediately. In May of 2023, while neighboring untreated stands were 4 to 6 feet tall, we saw a 99% reduction in the treated regrowth. Likewise, the stream bank we treated was clear. While 1 year of treatment made exceptional progress, we will continue these treatments until the knotweed is eradicated.